Last, but definitely not least, I wanted to talk about that Azov group. So let's go back to before Putin started this bloody invasion. When he had that just grievance laced speech back on a Monday in late February. He claimed that his forces were saving Ukraine from Nazis and that they were doing a policy of denazification. And as absurd as that was, because the majority of the country are not, and obviously Zelensky's Jewish, I guess the concept of denazification is being justified by the fact that there is one group with neo-Nazi ties that is working in Ukraine against the Russians. And this is the Azov group, and I just wanted to cover them because I think it's important to address, that there are claims of neo-Nazis working with the Ukrainians. Al Jazeera has an interesting tale of this group. The article talks about how the far-right neo-Nazi group has expanded to become part of Ukraine's armed forces, a street militia, and a political party. The article says here in quotes, Ukraine's National Guard tweeted a video showing Azov fighters coating their bullets in pig fat to be used allegedly against Muslim Chechens, who are allies of Russia and deployed in their country. Also, Azov has been involved in training civilians through military exercises in the run-up to Russia's invasion, end quotes. And just a side note, if you guys have seen pictures, right before the invasion really began, if you saw pictures of Ukrainians being trained with like wooden AKs, I think that was with the Azov group. But to go back a bit now, this group is a far-right, all-volunteer infantry military unit who has about 900 members. They're ultra-nationalists and accused of harboring neo-Nazi and white supremacist ideologies. And obviously the ultra-nationalist part would explain why they're fighting hard to keep the Russians out. From what I've also gathered, the group got their start in 2014 during the Russian invasion, of the East. They were fighting against the pro-Russian separatists in Donetsk. And, apparently during this time, the group was linked with violent assaults against immigrants, Muslims, and the Roma/Gypsy community. And I must just say that it is too bad that this happened because obviously when Putin's forces invaded eastern parts of Ukraine, the Ukrainian government needed help, right? And unfortunately, probably the thought process was an enemy of an enemy is my friend, right? And again, Putin's kind of caused this relationship of convenience here. But then again, he's using that as a pretext to invade. It's all just freaking nuts. But where it gets interesting, though, is that in 2014, these Azov forces helped the Ukrainian forces take back the city of Mariupol from the Russians. And at that time, they were actually absorbed into the Ukrainian National Guard, which is probably not what I would have done, but anyways. Going to another article on the group's founding, I read that this unit is led by Andrei Beletsky, who served as the leader of both the Patriot of Ukraine and the SNA. And the SNA is known to have carried out attacks on minority groups in Ukraine, and apparently in 2010, Beletsky said Ukraine's national purpose was to, in quotes, lead the white races of the world in a final crusade against Semite-led inferior races. So this guy's despicable, obviously, and it's worrying that he's kind of seemed to be a pretty predominant figure in Ukraine, and his groups have been absorbed into the Ukrainian National Guard. Never what you really like to hear. And actually, Beletsky, talking about him a little bit further, was elected to the parliament in 2014, which does in some ways tell me there's definitely an appetite in the country for these type of views, for these type of people. And something disturbing I read from back in the Al Jazeera article is that this group, the Azov group, is funded by the Interior Ministry of Ukraine, or at least in 2014 during the first invasion of the East. And also there's Ukrainian oligarchs who fund them. So there is an appetite in the country for this. You have to wonder, though, if it's convenience because of just the violence on the ground at the time. It's really hard to tell at this point, to be honest. And, going even further, there are questions about how radical all members of this group are. I have seen reports in the BBC that only 10 to 20% actually identify as white supremacists or Nazis, but let's be honest, you guys. If you are even involved in a group like this who talks about the white race and is anti-Semitic, you're probably at least okay with these tactics and probably at least kind of okay with racism and hate, right? I don't think you just join a group like this unless you kind of identify with them. At least that's my opinion of this. Now, there's another reason why I wanted to mention this today. Because while this group should not be the focus of this invasion, right? Like I've said, Putin is the bad guy. Putin is the one that's killing a lot of people. I don't think this group should be ignored either, and especially if they're giving Putin kind of an argument and a reason, or at least a justification. And also, I wanted to mention this because back in late February, The Intercept actually wrote a really good article about how, in quotes, Facebook was allowing praise of this neo-Nazi Ukrainian battalion if it fights against the Russian invasion. And the article actually says here, so Facebook will temporarily allow its billions of users to praise the Azov Battalion, which is a Ukrainian neo-Nazi military unit previously banned from being freely discussed under the company's dangerous individuals and organizations policy. Now, it should be clarified that, according to what I'm reading, the Azov Battalion still can't actually use Facebook platforms for, say, recruiting purposes or for publishing their own statements, and their symbols of hate and their uniforms will still be banned. But I really don't like this at all because, okay, this group is a convenient helping force against the Russians. And there is really not much we can actually do about them right now, right? They are boots on the ground with the Ukrainian forces against the Russians. However, Facebook should not allow this, and I think we need to be careful of letting our standards like this slide during a time of crisis, right? I'm assuming that Facebook just did this because they don't want their algorithms to react or block every post they find about this group, because I'm sure the amount of mentions of this group has just skyrocketed. Right? I mean, I'm sure non-racists and non-Nazis are probably talking about this group more than they were a year ago. The traffic to this group is probably more so. And Facebook probably doesn't want every post about this to be flagged. So it's probably convenient just to say we're going to allow this to be talked about on Facebook. But come on, it just sounds like a bad idea. They are neo-Nazis and they harass people who do not look like them. They don't like minorities. And even if they're helping the Ukrainian government, I think it's a shame on Facebook to have these double standards, right? Other groups are still banned, but this group, because they're on the good side of this fight, no, I think we need better standards than that. So, lots going on right now. Lots of rosy subjects, as always. That's going to do it for today. So I hope you guys, learn some things, even if they're not happy. And I'll be back later in the week. And again, you can find me, Alex Kapitko, on Twitter. You can also find the Centered from Reality podcast wherever you get podcasts: Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, videos on YouTube. So take care, and we'll be back soon.